From Washington, the McLaughlin Group, the American original. For over 3 decades, the sharpest minds, best sources, hardest talk.
Issue 1, stop redlining us.
First of all, I didn't set a red line. The world set a red line. The world set a red line when governments representing 98% of the world's population said the use of chemical weapons are abhorrent, and passed a treaty forbidding their use even when countries are engaged in war. Congress set a red line when it ratified that treaty.
President Obama set a precedent this week by being the first sitting American president to visit Sweden. During a joint news conference with the Swedish Prime Minister, Mr. Obama did his best to internationalize the red line. But Prime Minister Reinfeldt said Sweden could only support military action against Syria if it were authorized by the United Nations. The UN sent a team of inspectors to Syria to verify the use of the nerve gas sarin. 8 years ago, in 2005, also, the UN Security Council authorized sanctions against Syria. Resolution 1636 punished Syria for a terrorist attack in Lebanon that killed the then former Prime Minister of Lebanon, Rafik Hariri. But chemical weapons, being so horrific, may have struck a nerve in world opinion, enabling President Obama to elude the UN and build international support against Syria unchallenged by the UN. By the way, the UN was the brainchild of former President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who conceived of the world body, the UN, as a way to prevent a third world war. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill joined him in the effort. The U.S. is the largest contributor to the United Nations. Get this, $4.3 billion this year alone, constituting 22% of the UN's budget.
Question, let's assume Congress authorizes unilateral military action against Syria. Should Commander-in-Chief Obama then take the case to the United Nations before using unilateral force? Mort Zuckerman.
No, I don't think he should. In fact, I don't think he should have taken it to the Congress either. This is a presidential decision as far as I'm concerned. It's a matter of leadership by this president on an issue that deals with our national security. And what's happening in Syria, as far as I'm concerned, is also something that is not nearly as important as what's happening in Iran. That's where the real issue is going to happen, because Iran is a country that is developing nuclear weapons and actually threatens us in the most serious ways. So I think UN would just compound the problem of going to the wrong places for the support for what the United States should and should be doing.
Helena.
Well, first of all, I wouldn't assume that he's going to get authorization from the Congress. It's a very heavy lift. You have huge majority of Republicans opposed on a variety of reasons, including the fact that they don't like this president. You have a lot of Democrats who are elected on anti-war platforms who are not eager to vote for intervention. So this is far from a done deal. But as far as going to the UN, this administration has gone to the UN repeatedly to try to get resolutions of disapproval for the way that Assad is conducting a war against his own people, and they've been unsuccessful. Russia and China are on the Security Council, and they're implacably against anything that would condemn Assad. So it would be a futile effort, and the president in his remarks in Sweden called the Security Council, or the UN machinery at this point, an instrument of paralysis. And so I think it doesn't hurt to go, but the president is not, if he does go ahead with this, it's not going to be waiting on the UN.
Russia and China.
And I'm a fan of the UN, by the way, but I think in this particular instance, you know, we know what they're going to do, and I don't think they should have veto power.
Russia and China are members of the five-nation panel of permanent members of the Security Council.
That's right.
There are about 150 members of the Security Council itself. Is that correct?
No,
No.
of the General
many?
Assembly.
General
There
Assembly.
are, I think,
Assembly, right.
11 or 12 members of the Security Council, that's all.
And let's
Altogether?
let's talk about
Or is it 15?
Russia's role with Syria. Russia is behind the
Right.
Syrian government and is playing a role in arming the Syrian government. So you have this clash of just two sides here with the UN Security Council. So the idea of the president going there just seems pretty futile.
Welcome, Guy Taylor of the Washington Times.
Thanks, John.
Do you cover the State Department?
I do.
How's the Secretary of State doing?
I think the Secretary of State's actually been far more active and effective with Middle East policy than Hillary Clinton was. You could make the argument that he's actually derailed the Obama administration's Asia pivot away from Asia and back toward the Middle East. So the question is whether or not he's truly on the same page as President Obama with regard to Syria.
Oh, really?
I think so. I don't
You mean the
think-
Secretary of State is not representing the President of the United States?
But John,
I'm not saying he's not representing. I think he's made it very clear in public statements that he's representing. The question is whether he was ready to do a strike on Syria with support from
He's
John
with
McCain.
Moore.
he
You mean
called
he
it,
was arguing against
John,
He was arguing for it. He just
Yes.
did not want to
He
have to go
called-
to Congress with it.
John Kerry called what happened in Syria a moral obscenity, okay? And the president at that point looked like he was going to be very, very proactive in this thing. And now what happened was, when he made the decision, however, not to make the decision by himself, but to go to the Congress, who did he make it with? Dennis McDonough as Chief of Staff, and Susan Rice. John Kerry as Secretary of State, and Hagel, his Secretary of Defense, were left out of the decision-making process, which is
I
almost
also think,
unbelievable.
though, that John Kerry, unlike most of the people in the administration, recognized that the Iranian nuclear issue and the Syrian civil war and Hezbollah's involvement in it are the two sides of the same coin. And he recognizes that pushing the issue with threats of a U.S. strike will draw the Iranians out of their own political crisis and possibly make room on the nuclear negotiations.
Well, the
What's the
president-
significance of redlining?
Well, I think it's a style of kind of expressing American heroism in foreign policy. We say you cross that red line, and we're going to come play police and
All right,
tell
now,
you can't do it.
listen to what Donald Rumsfeld, former Secretary of Defense, said.
We have the president saying that there is a red line. He says he didn't draw it. It's drawn by the international community. You've got a Congress.
He did draw it.
He is saying that it's one that's drawn by the international community, by international standards, by Congress, by the American people.
This president has tried to find a way to blame everybody or anybody for everything. And leadership requires that you stand up, take a position, provide clarity, and take responsibility. And I can't imagine him saying that he didn't draw the red line.
Whatever he's saying, he has zero credibility.
But
Donald
he-
Rumsfeld, let's put up the classic picture of Donald Rumsfeld shaking the hand of Saddam Hussein a week before Hussein used chemical weapons on
Well, there's
the.
pictures of
Excuse
Kerry
me,
having
let me
dinner
finish,
with
Susan.
Bashar
I want
al-Assad.
to finish. Used chemical weapons against the Iranians, chemical gases that we probably supplied, and for the man who had led such a disastrous effort in Iraq to be passing judgment on this commander-in-chief is a moral obscenity.
Okay,
You don't even
hold on for a minute. I want to get this red line business straightened out. Obama's original red line statement, to refresh our collective memory, here is what President Obama said about a red line and Syria just over 1 year ago in August 2012.
I have, at this point, not ordered military engagement in the situation, but the point that you made about chemical and biological weapons is critical. That's an issue that doesn't just concern Syria, it concerns our close allies in the region, including Israel. It concerns us. We cannot have a situation where chemical or biological weapons are falling into the hands of the wrong people. We have been very clear to the Assad regime, but also to other players on the ground, that a red line for us is we start seeing a whole bunch of chemical weapons moving around or being utilized. That would change my calculus. That would change my equation.
Question, is what President Obama said then, in 2012, about a red line, the same as what he is saying today, in 2013, about a red line? Susan Ferrecchio.
Well, there you have it. He's talking about a red line. He's setting a red line. We discussed it a year ago on this very show. Now here we are. He's saying, I didn't set that red line. You don't even need Donald Rumsfeld to make the case. It's just very obvious. He set a red line, and then he said, wait a minute, I didn't set a red line. The reason he had to say that to save face. The press, everyone asking him, is his credibility on the line? He's trying to say, hey, it's not my responsibility now. That's why he's thrusting the decision over to Congress, because he's saying it's everybody's credibility. It's not my credibility. He doesn't want it on his shoulders. That's why Congress is being left to vote on this.
I got one question for him before I go to you. Is he falsifying?
No, well, to his credit, when he set the red line, which he very clearly did set, he did not say what comes on the other side of it. He did not explicitly say that it results in a
now
U.S.
he's saying,
military
I
strike
didn't set the
Syria.
red line. It was set by Congress.
Okay,
He's
well,
trying
to say the red line. He said it will change my calculus.
Right.
You're right. He didn't say how it would change his calculus, but clearly he wasn't going to just stand by as a neutral observer of the passing scene. There was clearly an implication that he was going to do a lot more.
It sounds
and
like
now he's saying it's the world.
He has a red line rap on him, and he wants to get rid of the red line
exactly
rap.
right.
And he'll say anything he has to say to do it.
He wants to get rid of the responsibility.
Instead of living by what he said originally, which is what Rumsfeld said.
That has been the general reaction to it, exactly that. There was a kind of feeling he really said red line.
Yes.
Now he's saying, well, I didn't really mean red line. It's the world's red line. It's an
it's
international
not my
red line.
conscience
It's
view that
basically
it's a red
not
line.
me.
He's
Right.
trying to depersonalize it, that it isn't only his red line that's been crossed, that this is something that should outrage the entire world, that 189 nations signed the Chemical Weapons Treaty. This has been a taboo that has been respected, since World War I, and that it's not only Barack Obama and his personal credibility, which is on the line, but it's the U.S., it's the world community, whether we allow this kind of, again, moral obscenity to go unchallenged. So if you want to keep picking apart his language, you can, but he's standing up there now.
He's the one that's picking apart his own language 2 years ago and today, and working out this resolution.
He is following up on it. He is a president who is now standing up, trying to get support against two parties that are very reluctant. So, he's not backing away.
Why isn't he successful in what he is saying about the seriousness of this issue with the American people?
First of all, because he spent 2 years using the United Nations Security Council for diplomatic cover not to do anything in Syria, because he needed to win a second term in the White House, and the way to do that was to run again as an anti-war president. So for him now to say we're not going to the United Nations, we're going to strike Syria, I think has shocked a lot of people, including the Iranians and the Israelis. Everybody's looking at this and saying, what is the U.S., where is Obama coming from on this?
What are the people in the State Department, the dedicated striped pants set? What are they saying?
Well, I think what they're saying is that Hillary Clinton was on board with the Obama approach of going to the United Nations Security Council and playing it out with the Russians, and now we have a very different player in the Secretary of State seat who is interested in pushing forward with a policy that's a lot more aligned with John McCain, Lindsey Graham, and the more aggressive conservative approach.
You also had those pictures of those kids being gassed.
That's right.
And you have, flying into the sky now, you have the humanitarian hawks, and they're all throughout this administration. This president is an anti-war president. He is reluctant about this. He didn't want to get involved in Syria. He still doesn't want to get involved in Syria, and he's trying to wall this off.
He's trying to have a better way, Eleanor. That's right. He is an anti-war president, and he doesn't want to take
He's calling for limited engagement, military engagement, much like we did in Kosovo and Bosnia, not an extended war, and it worked in those two places. Of course, there's some risk, but it may work here.
Issue 2, Obamacare showdown.
I have agreed to give this talk today because I'm still amazed at how much misunderstanding there is about the current system of health care, how it works, how it compares with what other people in other countries pay for health care and what kind of results they get, and what changes are actually occurring now and are going to occur in the future.
Former President Bill Clinton has been given a nickname by President Obama. He has been dubbed the quote-unquote Secretary of Explaining Stuff. This week, the new secretary set about explaining big stuff, namely Obamacare, also called the Affordable Care Act, passed by Congress in 2010. Now, 3 years later, the hour is nigh. October 1st, 3 weeks away, and there's a big White House PR push to educate the American people about the law. Polls show that they don't know enough about what's what. Besides Mr. Clinton, the White House is enlisting U.S. government officials, plus DJs, librarians, insurance companies, even celebrities to help spread the word. On October 1, people who do not have health insurance must buy it. They can enroll for health insurance by examining healthcare exchanges, a kind of health insurance mini marketplace set up online in every state where people can shop for a health insurance plan tailored to their needs and then enroll in it. That's key. Enroll in it. If someone does not have health insurance by the year 2014, less than 4 months from now, by the way, he or she will be penalized. How? By the IRS. The penalty for the first year is $95 per adult, or 1% of family income, whichever sum is greater. That fine goes up the longer one stays unenrolled. By 2016, say, the 1% penalty could go up, as well as the $95 per adult, climbing as high as $695 per adult. One main idea behind Obamacare is that if everyone pays in, it will keep insurance costs low for everyone. But the lack of young people who currently do not have health insurance, may be reluctant to buy it, is a particular worry for the White House. The number of people under age 65 who do not now have health insurance is 57 million.
Question. President Obama waived the Affordable Care Act's mandate for employers to provide insurance starting in January. He waived it. Why don't the White House also waive the individual mandate now taking effect?
Because the
entire... You get that, Grandma?
Yes.
Why don't the White House? Meaning those at the White House.
Well, if we don't have the individual mandate, the entire law will fall apart because it's based upon everybody, as you said, enrolling. Because you can't insure the uninsured unless those who are healthy are also insured so that everybody can pay a reasonable rate and that the insurance companies can survive because they're not just paying for people who are sick. But the problem is with this is that the next few months is going to be very critical to see whether or not these healthcare exchanges are set up properly, state to state. We're hearing lots of rumors that things are not going very smoothly. It's difficult to get an answer about how far along they are in getting this ready. We're just a few weeks away. And whether or not you can get young people to enroll if they only have to pay a $95 fine. In exchange, they would have to pay several $100s a month in some instances for health insurance when they all feel healthy and like they don't need it. So
are you following this?
All kinds of potential pitfalls here.
I think, though, the bigger issue that was touched on in the introduction there is how is it that the American people still don't understand this law that's been around for several years now. I can remember back in when it was called Romney Care originally, back in Massachusetts, and that program also had difficulty being sold to a much more liberal population in Massachusetts. Why has the Obama administration not put out a comic book or something that's on every coffee table across the country?
Well, that's a very good. That's a very good idea.
Really simple. Well, I've actually had this conversation with Jonathan Gruber, who was an advisor on Romney Care at MIT, and then was brought in to advise Obama on the Affordable Care Act before it was passed. And he said it was a good idea. But where is it?
What was the upshot in Massachusetts on Romney Care?
It's working well.
I think that they've had troubles with
getting it lofted,
with hospitals suing insurance companies and whatnot. But over time, the program has paid for itself.
And it's can we do that on a national? Is that the way we have to go on the national level?
President Clinton's message.
The middle class in Massachusetts.
President Clinton spoke from Little Rock, Arkansas. His speech was live streamed. He spoke for the better part of an hour, but he really wasn't talking to ordinary people
meaning what?
he was talking to the Republican politicians who were trying to sabotage this law in the various states. The law includes a job for people called navigators to help people enroll. In some states, they're trying to license those navigators to make the job difficult. And his point was that if you don't like the law, fine, but it's here to stay, and if you're an elected official, you take an oath to follow the law, and you should try to fix what's wrong with this law, and there are some problems, instead of trying to sabotage it. That was the president's message.
Are you familiar with this Republican sabotage rap that she's talking about?
Well, I'm not surprised by it, let me put it this way. But
you mean Republicans are capable of it?
It's
only
in 21 states.
The people with the best thoughts and the best goodwill on the Republican side are prepared to try and sabotage it. But there is a real issue that Clinton points out. We have only 87% of our people are coverage, roughly, and 100% of others. But it takes up 18% of our GDP and only 12% in the other countries. We have the most expensive health care with the least coverage of any major country. Something has to be done about it because it's going to break the bank in virtually every state and in this country.
Well, the problem,
and that's what he's trying to deal with.
The problem with the health care law, and this may be just the practical sense of whether it can actually survive, is that even for people with the lowest level of coverage, the bronze coverage, they're still paying several hundred a month in some states for the coverage, but their deductible and what they end up paying overall for health care is still going to be pretty astronomical. So we're really not getting
This is why you have a huge amount of part-time employment, because people in part-time employment do not have the obligation of getting involved in the health care program.
Is the law itself extremely complicated? I believe it was one time said that all of the packages together of the law are about 6 feet high.
Right, and
is that correct?
Yes, I don't know if it's 6 feet, but it's incomprehensible.
Well, if you
literally incomprehensible.
What would you do? Would you pay the fine, $250? Is that the fine?
No, the fine is $95.
$95
in year
just
one.
enough to have to go through this.
A lot of people are doing just that.
What do you think?
I don't think $95 is that much money for young people are buying car insurance. They know they have to have that, and every young person is a blink of an eye away from a major illness or an accident. And you know, and then what? Do we charge them when they hit the emergency room?
Pay the $95 and move on. Issue 3. When I am 64.
All my life, I don't know where it came from, but I believed in dreaming big. It doesn't satisfy me to have small dreams. And I can't tell you what a big dream this is out here.
It was an astonishing feat. Diana Nyad on Monday reached shore at Key West, Florida, after, get this, swimming 103 miles from Cuba. The staggering journey took 53 hours. Nyad had a team to keep her on course, guide her to Florida. She swam alone through shark-infested waters without an anti-shark cage. She swam through swarms of jellyfish that stung her face, even though she wore a special mask. And she swam at times through rough waters that made her swallow seawater, causing her to repeatedly retch. To make it all the more amazing is Miss Nyad's age. She is 64 years old.
Question, there's a lesson here for all of us. What's the lesson? What?
The lesson is, if you have a dream, keep working at it. She had this dream. This is her 5th time that she tried this. It's the most extraordinary story of physical, not only physical achievement, but mental determination and strength. It's absolutely miraculous.
That's part of the story.
Well, in the previous segment, we talked about young people feeling invincible. Well, I guess if you're 64, you can feel invincible too. I mean, it's extraordinary. That's 101 miles, not 101 laps. I can't even get across the pool widthwise a couple of times. It's just such extraordinary willpower.
It's not just willpower. I think the lesson here too is I think as we get older, a lot of us sort of retreat from physical activity. And it should be the opposite. As we get older, we should be doing more to stay physically fit. This woman was obviously staying fit and swimming and exercising. I have an aunt in her 70s now who bikes, 25 miles every week, and we can do it if we just, don't give up and think we're getting old. We should all just, shrivel up and not be lifting weights and going to the gym.
There's a bigger point here. What's the bigger point?
Cuba is so close that you can swim it.
That's right.
How is it that after all these years we're still so far apart geopolitically?
Well, is that the case? I thought we're going to. They are now going to be able to trade exports to the United States.
And
It's
so
They ought to lift the embargo.
neither of the
incremental, though.
Neither of the Castros can swim.
I'll tell you why the state of affairs is as it is, because your generation is older than the generation coming along, say in their teens, late teens, even early 20s. They don't know anything about Cuba. They don't know the history of it.
Well,
they don't know anything about the
personally
Castros.
involved through their family, they don't.
Well, we have the presidential aspirant down in Florida, and he reveals and talks about Cuba.
Yeah.
Who am I talking about?
Marco Rubio.
Marco Rubio.
Ted Cruz too.
What is really notable about this is the 5th time that she's tried, and 5 is the charm. You understand?
Right.
So any
Well,
other digits you've been working with, whether it's out in Vegas or wherever,
Bet on 5.
marriage,
How
it
many
could be.
times have leaders in Washington seriously tried to thaw relations with Havana?
Do you know what the interim was between her last effort and this effort?
A few months, wasn't it?
A few months?
It's a few years.
No.
4 years, I think.
How many years?
Yeah.
4 years.
Oh, okay.
How many years?
She hasn't tried in a while.
30 years.
Yeah.
She hasn't
No,
done it. No. That's
No, it's not 30 years. She's
She
tried
was
it
retired from
very-
distance swimming for 30 years before her comeback. I have the fact right here.
Well, you may be
30 years.
Yeah, but I remember her fairly
Making
recently
attempt.
attempting this and giving up partway along the way, and I thought that would be the last we'd hear of her.
Well,
So
this-
this kind of came up out of the
She
blue.
retired from distance swimming, so that gives you a little cushion in there for her
In her
recent
30s.
reassertion of her interest in and her performance in distance swimming.
Right.
But that interim was 30 years. What does that tell you?
It tells you that
Tells
distance
you she's
swimming
Rip
is not
Van
exactly a
Winkle on top of
popular
everything
sport.
else.
Just because you're out of the game doesn't mean that you
right.
can never get back in.
Right.
That's what it means. Predictions, Mort.
Part-time employment is going to grow from 25% of the workforce to close to 50% of the workforce, in part because of the problems of healthcare obligations.
Is it all bad?
Yeah, not all bad, but that's terrible because the average compensation for
Thanks
part-time
thanks to tax subsidies under Obamacare, insurance premiums will be affordable even for young, healthy people.
Susan.
Syria resolution does not pass Congress.
Right.
Syria resolution does not pass, but Obama goes forward with the strike anyway.
In Australia's election this coming week for Prime Minister, the incumbent Labour Party's Kevin Rudd will be defeated in a major upset by the Conservative candidate Tony Abbott. Don't forget you can watch the McLaughlin Group on the web at any time, day or night. McLaughlin.com. Bye-bye.
Looking for these? You drive buzzed. It could be one very expensive ride.
First, you gotta make bail. Then pay me to get your car back.
Your insurance premiums will go through the roof.
And my legal fees just keep adding up. All told, it could end up costing you $10,000.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.